What's going on, everybody? Thanks for taking a couple minutes out of your day or your evening to check out my channel. If you're new here and you enjoy this video, if you get some information out of it that's useful to you, if you could take a second to like it, share it, comment it, subscribe it, whatever it, I will appreciate it. Coming up in this video, I'm just going to show you a couple things I got going on at my garage. I have not been doing much work on it ever since the pandemic hit and the price of materials have gone through the roof. I mean, my house is definitely on hold for this year. For example, when I framed this garage up last year, a sheet of this dip sheeting, I got it for $19.50, which was when the price just started going up a little bit. I think it's $72 a sheet now. Man, there's somebody is making some serious change on this. And I doubt if it's the guy cutting the trees down in the woods and the sawmill guys. It's some fat cats in Wall Street or something. For today, I've been working on capping the outside of these garage door framings with aluminum. I just took and used some stuff my brother had laying at a job site that he didn't really want. So I took it. It's basically a 1 1/4 inch scraps of rim joist. It's basically like OSB, but it's 1 1/4 inches thick. It's about 2 1/4 inches wide this way. One thing I did do down at the bottom, this type of material can wick up moisture and swell up pretty easily. So it'll last about 6 or 8 inches down here. I put a piece of treated wood down here. I actually have 3 of the 4 sides on already. I got one of the top pieces up here on. Anytime you're doing something like this where something's gonna overlap, you always wanna start at the point where you would look at the most. When the next piece comes over here and wraps around that piece, the joint's gonna be facing that way and it'll be more difficult to see. A tip before we start bending anything, this is basically a J that comes around here. I took and just added all these measurements up right around here. It turned out to be about 11 1/4, and I left a 1 inch tab onto the inside of the garage here. I always start bending right here, and I actually make it a little shy. I don't know if you can see there's about a 1/16 gap here. Once the J channel comes on here, that'll be hidden. For example, if you would start over here and start bending around, and you bent here, and this was too long, if your piece was a little bit too wide, it's not going to go in nice and tight to the wood, and you end up having to trim that whole thing off, which is a pain. So it's best to start here and wrap around. And then I'll show you how I bend these little return tabs here, so that when the top piece comes and slides over that, it makes a nice joint here. And I'll also show you how I cut the miters up here and everything. Okay, so a little tip on even just rolling this out. You don't want to pick this up. You always want to have something to stop your aluminum from rolling out. But you don't want to just drag this along here, and it just puts scuff marks on the bottom of it. You're better off just picking up the whole roll, taking it down, and just rolling it out nice and slowly. Okay, so here's my final bend that I'll be making on this, and the break. It's supposed to be 6 3/4 from here to here. That's what I got. And that's it for the bending. It's basically just a J hook with like the extra little tab for inside the garage. Now we're going to take this piece over to my little workstation over there, nice and clean, and I'm going to cut it to fit. Okay, I need to measure from the concrete up to the corner where I need to make a bend, and that turned out to be 90 1/16, and that gives me a little bit of expansion room. It was 90 1 8 to start with, but I'm going to cut it down to 90 1/16. I'll let it grow a little bit. Okay, so this is the top of our piece. This is the piece that comes to the inside of the garage. The measurement was 90 1/16 I want to go. I'm going to put 2 marks here, one at 90 1/16 and one at 91 1/16. I'm going to cut it at 91 1/16. That's going to give us 1 inch extra to bend the tab over. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to score from this mark, from the 90 1/16 inch mark, the whole way up along this bend here, and then I'll crack that open. A couple little scores here. A little bit of bending, that'll start to peel. Throw a little square mark up here. Now I'm going to score the first mark. The cut mark is the one with the extra inch. I'm going to score it heavily. And then on the bend line, I like to take and just put a really light score here. I just barely scratch the paint. It helps it bend a little easier when you're doing it by hand. I mean, they make hand brakes and stuff. If you have access to one of those, that's great. Now I'm going to come to the inside here at the 90 and the 16th mark again, and I'm going to score down at the bend here. That'll make that break apart. Clear down to the 90 and the 16th mark. Now I'm going to take that chunk out of there. That chunk is gone. Now this is the part we're going to bend here, that 1-inch part. Different ways to do this. Like I said, if you have a hand brake, you can just take that and bend it. I'm just going to put my framing square up underneath the aluminum. Get it nice and square on the edge. I'm just going to do it by hand right down over my framing square. This is where that really light score here helps, but it can also be a disaster if you start working at it a little bit. It'll actually crack your aluminum. You barely just want to scratch the paint, really. Press down here as hard as you can and just try to hold it in place and bend it right over that framing square. You'll see when I start installing this, this is going to extend up past a little bit. I'll finish cutting it once I get it put on there. I'm going to cut 2 little slight angles here and here. All we really want there is that bent part to help hide that corner. But you don't want these sticking out in case they hit the other piece of aluminum coming into it. So just nip a little angle there. Just takes a slight angle, and that's going to be enough. So now, say a prayer, and hopefully the piece will slide right on out here. I'm going to start from the outside and just hook this on here. Push it in tight to the wall. Now see, that's going to slide in there, and it's not going to hit the wall. It's actually about a 1/16 of an inch away. Once it gets pushed in the whole way, it beats the crap out of trying to trim that off later. Now I'm just going to come around here and hook this 1-inch lip. I can't do this and hold everything at once. I'm going to slide it up. I got a small gap underneath here, about 1/8 of an inch or 1/16 of an inch if that needs to expand a little bit. And that just slides right on there. Pretty decent fit here. I'm going to put a couple of trim nails in here. A couple trim nails here. Then we'll get up here and I'll show you how I cut this very end piece here. Okay, I got my piece slid up tight here. It sticks up by here. I'm going to measure down the back side here. I got 1 inch and 11/16. I'm going to measure down to 1 inch and 11/16. I'm going to take my knife and I'm going to score from that corner at 1 inch and 11/16 and just slightly downhill. And I'm going to take my snips and cut down here and break that piece off. Now what that does, that little angle there, lets the next piece ride over across the top of here without any interference. Now I'm going to cut this at about 1 inch above here, just roughly, doesn't matter. And we're going to bend this tab over here. Then once I bend this over, that'll keep white right here on the outside. Okay, so this works in other instances, but this is a really good spot to do this. If your hammer hits this corner, it's a guaranteed dent. So basically I start my nail, just tap it in until I got about 1/4 of an inch left. Take a nail set, and I just hold it backwards instead of forwards for this. I'm not trying to set the nail in, just hold that backwards and tap that in. That keeps it from banging these corners up. They dent easily, especially with a hammer. So that's it. I'm going to put a couple more tacks in here, then we'll get on to a top piece. Okay, got another little tip for you here. Everything doesn't work out as planned all the time. My aluminum wasn't hitting the sheathing on the garage until right down here at the very end. I don't know if my aluminum was at a little bit of a taper or if this flares out. Regardless, it wasn't letting that set in there. It was making a buckle. So instead of trying to cut this up here with a knife or a pair of snips and bending that all around, I just took a chisel and I made a relief slot into my plywood here. Now it goes in there nicely. It was buckling right here. Another tip, typically when you're measuring stuff to bend around, you just measure the wood here. Like here I got 6 and a big 5/8. But when you're overlapping a piece of aluminum that's already on here, you want to actually measure the aluminum. Right here I got 6 3/4. Here it was 6 5/8. So it's a little bit wider, the thickness of the aluminum, and I'm a slight bit big here. So you want that to go around that aluminum. If I did it 6 5/8, it would never go around this right here. But now I measured from the inside corner here to that piece of aluminum and then added 1 inch for just overlap here. So I've already measured 1 inch longer than what I had. I think it was 57, measured 58. We're gonna remove this whole chunk right here. So similar as before, I'm gonna score the inside here. We don't have to leave an extra inch for bending or anything right now on this piece. That excess off, it breaks right off again. Now I'm going to square into here. So anytime you're scoring this aluminum, if you can score from the back side to make your break, it gives a cleaner cut on the side that shows. This is going to stick past, and then I'll hold this up here and mark it, and then we'll come and cut the miter on here. Okay, so I got my piece just slid on here temporarily. I got it butted nice and tight here. I'm going to mark up underneath the back side of here, and that'll show me where to end my miter up here at the point. And then don't know if that's showing up, but I'm just going to mark this up here. Where it ends, and I'll take it down and cut it. Okay, so here's the mark that I made at the top. I'm going to snip that off right here, cut that off, and then I'm going to miter right down along here. And I'm going to leave. Again, scoring on the back side. And hopefully that'll plop on there and make a nice miter on the outside here. And I got a little bump up here. That's not too hard to take care of. Just tiny tap there. And that's about it. We've got a nice clean miter going here. No hole here, no hole there. And that's bent up over the top right here. Okay, so here's a little trick. When I was getting ready to nail on the inside of here, I noticed I had a gap out here. What I did was I came to the inside of the garage where it's way less noticeable, and I slid a couple little slivers of scrap trim coil behind here and pulled the gap to the inside, and that closed that right up. There was a gap right there. If I'd have just nailed that tight, it would have forced this out, and it would have looked worse than what it was just sitting there. So I'm going to finish up over on that side, then I'll just show you the finished product. Okay, so that's about a wrap here for today. Got the doors all wrapped up in aluminum. Well, the door framing, whatever you want to call it. Turned out pretty decent, really. So now that white aluminum makes my garage doors, dirty garage doors, look even dirtier. I just got to get the molding for around here, weather seal, whatever you want to call it. Put that on, and then start siding. Next video coming up, we'll be putting on corner post. Thanks again for tuning in, everybody. Hope you enjoyed this video. Maybe you learned something. If so, let me know. Have a blessed day, everyone.